As I was praying and as I was thinking throughout the week, what do I need to share with our people? What do they need to hear? The 4 spiritual habits that we've been talking about: spending time with God, spending time with others, sharing your story, and using your gifts. All these things are what makes the Christian lifestyle highly effective. So the first thing I want to talk about is spending time with God. So I want everybody to close your eyes. I want you to think about some of your closest friends, and I want you to think, how do y'all spend time together? And I want y'all to just shout them out at me. How do you spend time with them? Riding around, eating, jamming, movies, roller skating, TV, fishing. Okay, and if you're a youth kid, you have to raise your hand. Just kidding. But now, what if I said that the only way that you can hang out with your friend is if y'all watch TV all year round? I'm talking TV 365. That's the only way that y'all can hang out. You'd probably think I'm pretty nuts, right? Because there's tons of things that we just named on ways to spend time together. Of course, there's not only one way to spend time with your friends. So that's not how relationships work, and that's not how adventures work. We have to see our relationship with God as an adventure and not a formula. And that's the big idea for this week. To know Jesus, to love Jesus, to follow Jesus is more than coming here on Thursday night or Sunday morning to sit in a warm chair. I got to see another level of God. Actually, the last missions trip that we went on, there was a language barrier there, and there's a language barrier with the kids, language barrier with the adults, even the preacher, and we ended up ministering to these people who we couldn't really communicate to. But guess what? The power of God showed up, and I'm telling you, they were crying and they were grateful because not what we were saying, but because the power of God showed up, and they could feel it. And if that wasn't adventurous enough for me, on the last day, it was Sunday, and I came in to preach that Sunday morning, and the pastor was down there on his knees, and there wasn't nobody up in the place. And I asked the translator guy, I was like, what's going on with him? He said, well, he's praying that the people will come, And so I went and tapped the pastor on the shoulder and said, we're going to help answer that prayer. So we went and hit the slums of Juarez. I'm talking about the back roads. And we went and invited people to church, and we ended up filling it up with about 30, 40 people to preach the gospel. And then just another praise report, we came back, and then within a week or two, we decided to take our youth kids to summer camp. And during summer camp, I'm not lying, every single kid from every different background had an experience with Jesus. Am I right, Andre? Amen. My wife even got to baptize some kids. Some of them we had to hold a little bit more than, y'all get the point. So what I'm trying to say is that if going to church or praying is the only way that you know how to spend time with God, and there's no contentment there, and or maybe you're bored, I think that it's time for you to take your next steps with your faith. Do y'all agree with me? Yeah. So whether you've been following God for years or still trying to decide what you think about him, your relationship with God is an adventure and not a formula. So James 4:8, it says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. So can you draw near to God when you're worshiping? Yes. What about when we do prayer lines? Can you draw near to God when you're praying for people? What about when you're leading someone to Jesus? Well, what about when you do missions trips? What about when you're doing small groups? What about doing online Bible colleges? So my point is that there's more than one way to spend time with God. And I don't want anyone to feel stuck, that, well, if going to church and praying is all I can do for God, then this doesn't really feel like an adventure for me. Man, there's tons of things that you can do to spend time with God. And I actually gave y'all a handout that y'all can take home with y'all, and it's got different ideas on there. What are common ways to spend time with God? What are uncommon ways? So, man, y'all check that out. My next spiritual habit I'm going to talk about is spending time with others. And let me get two volunteers. Let me get Andre and Harley. Y'all come on up. And I wore this bandana not for any gang purposes, but for this this exercise. Would you tie that around Andre? Do we need to take the glasses off or put yeah, there you go. I'll wear those. All right, face that way, Andre. Yeah. Yeah. Now we know he's not cheating, guys. All right. You got him, Harley?
I'm trying to get him nice and tight.
It's all right. I know Andre's hard. He ain't going to cheat. Spin him like twice. Let's get him in the center. That way he can't have an idea where you're bringing him. All right, Harley. Choose which table you want to bring him to. Yeah. Come on. You can do it. Do it to him. Put his hand in it. All right, now I'm just having fun. All right, the point I'm trying to make is that there's good stuff on this side. They got a Bible. They got Sour Patch Kids, a guitar. On this side, Andre, she chose the dog food side. She kind of had a second option. Second thoughts, but I made sure she followed through with the dog food side because that's what my friends would have did to me. So in our life, if we want to make it on this journey towards knowing and following Jesus, we need to think about the people that we're journeying with, because each one of them has the power to impact our faith. You know, maybe picking up dog food isn't the worst thing you could influence someone to do, but you could imagine where y'all can take a seat, guys. Give them a hand clap. You can hold on to that. Oh, you want these? What's the magic word? Just play. Good job, Audrey. So whether it's the words we say or the things that we watch or the way we treat people or the way that we think about God, the people in our lives have the power to lead us towards good or harm. And those are Vienna sausages. I will give those out later, so don't worry. I know I said that you get to choose the people that you journey with, but maybe some of y'all disagree with that. Maybe you're saying today that I didn't get to choose my family, or I didn't get to choose my coworkers, or maybe I didn't even get to choose what school I went to. I don't even have one friend that I could count on, less several of them that I could choose from. And you're right. You can't just snap your fingers and then out of thin air, all those relationships become perfect. So my question is, what do you do? So we need to take control over the things that are in our power. And what I mean by that is that you can choose today to invest in a few great relationships. If some of y'all are thinking, who? Well, man, just look around. There's people in here that are striving to follow Jesus. Am I right, people? There's tons of people in here that are like-minded, that are looking for the same things that you are. Proverbs 13:20 says, walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. Let me just hit on the second part. I was debating if I should share this. I'm going to share it. I can't help. Y'all are like family. So I remember my BC, which is before Christ days, I was down there in New Orleans, particularly on Bourbon Street. And me and my buddy had shut the night down. It was about 5 or 6. And most of the places on this side were starting to close down. So us being fools and him also being a fool said that, that end of the street is open all the way towards the back. And so I'm just going to cut a long story short. in about 20 minutes, we found ourselves in the LGBT section, and we quickly found out that we were out of place. So what I'm saying is don't take advice from fools and don't hang out with fools because you'll end up in crazy places. So let me hit on walking with the wise and becoming wise. Have y'all heard that scripture before? Yes. Have you also heard that show me your friends and I'll show you your future? It's a big intervention one. Or show me the 5 people you surround yourself with and that's who you're going to become. You know why those sayings are well known and they've been passed on? Is because they're true. And they line up with scripture. So it's a wonderful thing to find someone here or someone that you can confide in who's striving to follow Jesus. That way you can talk and you can help each other out. So raise your hand if y'all got that one person that helps y'all grow spiritually, man. Raise your hand if y'all got that one person. Got a bunch? Man, that's good. It's good to have an arsenal of good buds. All right, raise your hand if you got some friends that they just don't believe like you do. That looks like a dead-on tie. When I was playing football in California, I had a buddy who we spent a lot of time together. And when he would come down to Louisiana, he would call me and we'd go see basketball games or we'd go get lunch. And this particular time, he said, "Hey man, what you been up to?" And just to let y'all know, a little Christian secret: when someone says what you been up to, it's a perfect time to brag on Jesus. Amen. Because now you're not forcing it on nobody. They asked. So I proceeded to tell him, man, I gave my heart to the Lord senior year when I left and I got saved. And he stopped me, thank you. I like hand claps. And he was like, got saved. And so I proceeded to tell him, yeah, man, I gave my heart to the Lord. Jesus from the Bible, he's also outside the Bible too. All the manuscripts and the history and Jerusalem, everything confirms who he is. And that all my questions have been answered. I know where good and evil comes from. I know what happens when I die. I know that I'm not just walking around here, without any purpose. I know what the two most important things to know is the day you're born and the reason why you're born. And I said I found my purpose, and I proceeded to tell him, that Jesus took on our sins, and when we accept him, he changes you, And you know what he told me? He told me he was an atheist, and he said that I usually trip up Christians like for fun, And he said, but you gave me a lot to think about, and I want to tell y'all the story doesn't end with him turning his heart over. But if it wasn't for his kind of questions like that, I wouldn't know how to stand strong in my faith. So, man, if y'all want to reach teenagers, if y'all want to reach coworkers, or pretty much anyone in the year 2020, man, there's a lot of skepticism going around and stuff. So, man, it's just best to study the hard questions, because kids want to know why they can't have a relationship and continue to smoke weed. They think, God made it from the plants and, it's mine, I can have it. God made the poison ivy too, but we're not burning that up, And, there's identity issues with teenagers, females want to know why they can't get married to other females, and same thing with guys. And they think love is love and I can define it how I want to, but man, God has given us love, and we love because he first loved us, right? And that goes against the order of things. You can't procreate. It's dangerous on the other side. And man, that's just not the order that God's made these things. And it's not that he's against you. It's just not how he does things. God's a God of order, and he has a spirit of excellence. Amen. So how do I balance having relationships with people who know Jesus and people who don't? It's a good question, right? That's a question I was asking myself for a while. I had to pray for the answer. And the rule of thumb is, as long as you're affecting them and they're not infecting you. I'm going to say it again. As long as you're affecting them and they're not infecting you. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean whenever you get around them and there's that world talk and all of a sudden you don't feel like you're having influence on them, but all of a sudden you catch yourself slipping with some cuss words, or you go out there to just hang out with them a little bit, and then all of a sudden you feel like having a few drinks, or it's just best to balance those. I invest in the relationships that help me grow, and I balance the other ones. I don't completely cut them unless the Lord's told me to, but I balance those. Same thing with my friend I was just talking about, because Romans 12:2 says you don't have to conform to this world, but be transformed. I feel like a WWE wrestler every time I do that. Hulk Hogan. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Y'all know what that means? That means that Zach Sinclair got saved 5 years ago. That means the renewing of my mind, I have to remind my mind every day that he's still saved. So to renew your mind for me, and spending time with God is I put that word in and I download it into my heart and my mind. I memorize it, I listen to worship music, and I get in the zone, man, and it changes my attitude, changes my mindset, the way I see things. So the last spiritual habit that I'm going to talk about is sharing your story. Your story will always be in progress and not complete, so don't worry. I want to call up on a few people, but before I do, I want to talk about why we should share our story. Our story is our testimony. And number one is because you may not think it's significant, but someone needs to hear your story. Because we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different people that you can touch that I can't touch, and vice versa. So people need to know if God can do it for you, then he can do it for me. There's hope whenever you hear other people's stories, man. There's ministering with Steve. They had a guy that that came in here and he had a crazy background. I said, Steve, would you just talk to this guy? And Steve's been shot. Steve's come from the streets, and he was able to identify with him. So there's all different backgrounds. All right. Number two, because sharing your story or your testimony makes things clear. Have you ever noticed talking about something or writing something down helps you make sense of things? Well, faith works the same way. When you talk or write about something, it helps you see what Jesus has done more clearly. All right, and number three, before I get to number three, I want to get 2 girls and 2 boys. Eeny, meeny, miny, Drew, Clayton. Let me get Christy and Sharana. Come on, I love it when people willingly go in the lion's den. I remember talking to a few people before this. Can you hold it for me? And I said, I'm gonna call on you later on tonight. They're like, their eyes got this big. They're like, come on, man, really? But they still decided to stick it out. So I'm gonna start on this side. And number 3, hold on, I got one more point to say. I forgot about number 3. Number 3 is because sharing your story helps you grow. And the more you share it, the easier it gets. And it's still in progress, so never think that you have to be at a certain level to tell someone about Jesus. So, Drew, it's so nice having this thing.
Let me get that.
Yeah. Drew, where are you from?
Lafayette, Louisiana.
What was your life like before Christ?
Well, I mean, I didn't grow up going to church, so I was confused about how the world was growing up, not really knowing, but knowing that it wasn't right. Like, didn't understand why people were hateful, nobody seemed to care about stuff.
What'd you get caught up doing?
I started drinking heavy in high school. Started having a lot of sports injuries. Had my first surgery at 16 and seemed to have one a year for the next decade. So
Jesus.
Pain pills became very common to me. It just was a normal thing. They're just handing them out. Grew up in a household where if I didn't drink, I felt like I would have been a disappointment. That's just what I thought was normal. These things that you just assume are normal as a kid. You grow up and realize, hey, man, this is way off. You're out of line.
Jesus. Who's had family members that got caught up in drugs or alcohol? Come on. So how did you change your life from? Because now you're clean cut, you're involved in church, you got a wife that actually, she sings in worship.
I'm telling you.
Brother, how did you go from the worst to being blessed? What happened?
I mean, even when you're not ready, the Lord is guiding you along the way. When I was in high school, my brother went off to a Christian rehab, completely transformed his life, and that was probably the first moment that I was like, okay, there has to be a God, because what just happened with him just was amazing. And then my dad was kind of rough, and then he started going to church when I was about 22, and I was like, man, he started changing, and I was like, what's going on here? But at that point, I had built my case on him, on everything, you know what I mean? And I wasn't ready. But how many of you know the Lord will bring you to a place where you're ready?
Come on.
So after my third arrest...
You've been arrested?
What?
Come on, man. You can't have that on
My beautiful wife that Zach mentioned, she's not actually there.
She's somewhere.
But she's with us in spirit. And she gave me an ultimatum. It's like, hey, you're getting help or I'm leaving. Which I knew God had put her in my life, but I wasn't sure why up until that moment. Because if it was up to me, man, I would have kept doing what I was doing. I would have took whatever consequences and, stayed stuck where the devil had me, man. I was in bondage. And I came here with selfish reasons. I just came here to, I'm not going to lose her because I know that was important. But when I got in here, God really transformed my heart and made me realize it was a lot more than saving my relationship, man. I wasn't ready to be a father. I wasn't ready to be a godly husband and lead a household. And through being here, God surrounded me around a lot of amazing people, man, that just really, like all those things Zach was talking about earlier, man, I wasn't doing none of that. Now I got all that on the checklist, you know what I mean? Because the Lord is faithful, man. And tell my guys, I was like, well, what's different now? I used to do a lot of stupid stuff. Now I do less stupid stuff. Because, man, I'm still not, killing it every day, but I'm striving towards being a better man, and that's what I got.
Thank you. Y'all give Drew a hand clap. So, usually what the Lord saves you from, he uses all that so that you can have power and that you can reach people that have been through what you've been through. Because it's hard to relate to someone when you haven't had that experience, I mean, how many of y'all, if your teenagers get caught up in drugs, wouldn't mind Drew coming to sit down and talk with them? Because he's got some things that he can say and speak into their lives. Have y'all ever seen Scared Straight, where them cocky boys go to prison and them prisoners, get up in their face and let them know? It's like a Christian gang. That's what Drew's going to do to any kids that want to act crazy with drugs. Thank you, Drew. Christy?
Oh, okay. So my upbringing was, my family had been plagued by alcohol for years. It's not something I struggled with. I struggled with trying to be perfect. And I was a rule follower. The worst thing I did was sneak my friend into a bar, and she was almost 18, and I was already 18. So
security.
Praise the Lord. Security got us, too. We walked out, and my car had been towed, but I had to trade my Aerosmith tickets for the funds for a tow so my parents wouldn't find out. But for the most part, I grew up in a pretty rigid house. I grew up in a very rigid religious background, and I had it all going on, I thought. So I saw it, perfection. Perfection was my drug, and control was my drug. And so for the people that think that, oh, my testimony isn't going to be as great as somebody who's been delivered from drugs and alcohol and bullets and prison, you can be delivered from self-righteousness and have the same kind of testimony.
Come on.
So, I came here a little over 2 years ago, only because God called me to come here, because 3 months earlier there was no way I was coming to Baker. And
Thanks,
no way I was coming into ministry, not because I didn't love the people, because they are my family and I love them greatly. And I would go to the ends of the earth for them, for all of you as well. He changed my heart completely. I cannot imagine a day in my life without the store, without the guys, without you guys in my life. My heart has been completely crushed, and God is working on rebuilding it right now. So from a past of self-righteousness and control and Little Miss Perfect, as most people would have thought I was, came this ugly, critical background that I pray that He is continuing to make into beauty from the ashes. So for those that think that they don't have this grand testimony because they don't have all this shattered history and all these great stories to tell, just know that He's writing your story, and it's going to be a thing of beauty.
Amen.
Well, stuff happened to me whenever I was growing up. And I felt like I had a very low self-esteem. And I felt like I didn't have much friends growing up and all that stuff. But as I was getting older, depression built in, low self-esteem, and felt like I wasn't loved and stuff like that. But I know my family loves me, but that's just the enemy that wants to say that you're not loved, you're not worthy, you're not this, you're not that. But God would say, after I went through everything, I tried to commit suicide, I died. Then when I woke up, I was like, God, why did you wake me up? I wanted to die. And He gave me a second chance. And now I surrendered and gave it all to Him. And I love God with all of my heart.
Come on.
I try to do more and more for God. I try to read the Bible. I try to do the daily plans in the Bible as much as I can. And I just try to reach out to the people at work where I work. They got so many young girls out there, and I'm trying to reach out to them. And but I'm doing really good now.
Sharanda. And thank you for sharing that with us. And if there's anyone that's online who's, maybe struggle with depression or suicide, there's hope, right, Sharanda? So, man, this is my buddy Clayton. He came to support me tonight. We were roommates in college. He was a pastor's kid too, and we've had the same background. It's going to be easy to follow this up, Clayton. So just don't even worry. Clayton, what was your life like before the Lord?
So I was, like you said, I was a pastor's kid. I grew up in a good home. Whenever you're a pastor's kid, Zach can relate to this. People got you under a magnifying glass. They're checking out everything you do. And which, isn't always a bad thing. It puts a little pressure on you to make sure you're doing the best you can. But, of course, like anybody else, you always fall. So I was saved at a young age. I was a good kid through high school. I, of course, did things that I didn't need to do.
We did go to New Orleans together, but he wasn't the
I
same
wasn't
one I was talking about.
I wasn't what he was talking.
He wasn't. He always had a little bit more wisdom than I did, even in the world.
So all through high school, of course, I did things, I got in things that I wasn't supposed to. But what Zach said tonight, he said, hang out with those friends that aren't aren't Christians, you can hang out with them as long as you're affecting them and they're not infecting you. And I think, that I can relate to that because in college you start getting exposed to a lot more things and you start getting out into the real world and you hang out with these people who you think you're strong enough that you can hang out with them. And then you eventually start falling into the things that they do. And so that's where I found myself, is just falling and falling. And then our senior year, I moved in with Zach and a friend of ours, and we partied. We did party, but we also, Zach. We had a class together, and Zach came in and. He was telling me, he was like, man, I got saved this weekend. I'm like, what? That's awesome. Huh? And so we just started talking, and this was like at the end of the semester. So Zach, I'm trying to study. I'm trying to graduate. This is our senior year last semester. So I'm over here studying books, and Zach is in the living room reading the Bible, not studying the books. And he was like, man, what are y'all doing? I got to read the Bible. Read the Bible.
I was a little legalistic.
What are y'all reading books for? Y'all need the Bible. That's all you need. And so, I mean, Zach influenced me, and he helped me a ton in just moving forward with my life with Christ and getting back on the right track. And so, I mean, I have a lot to thank Zach for, and just being able to get back on the right road. And again, what he preached tonight about the affecting people and them infecting you is very serious. And it was an awesome word that I heard. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, man. Would y'all give Clayton a hand clap? So every head bowed and every eye closed. Lord, I thank you for tonight. I thank you for all those who came up to share their story tonight, Lord. Lord, I pray, Lord, that these spiritual habits that we talked about, Lord, I pray that they would become not just something that we heard about, but something that we can really apply to our life, Lord. Show us new ways to spend time with God, Lord. Put the right people in our lives that we can spend time with, and help us and give us the courage, Lord, to share our story, Lord. Let every person know that they each have their own story, and they can positively impact someone for Jesus, Lord. So with that being said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I bless everyone. Safe ride home. Thank y'all for coming tonight. Thank y'all for joining us online.